existential threats should go there. But any American money which directly or indirectly goes for settlements and goes for discrimination and goes for all of these things should be stopped immediately. The American taxpayer money should not go or should not relieve any governmental budgets which are going to the wrong places. For existential threats, yes, for the other, no.
That is such an unsophisticated argument.
The U.S. aid to Israel is divided between foreign military aid and civilian aid. The Israeli government, since the time of Benjamin Netanyahu in 1996, has sought to bring down the civilian aid. Right now, the bulk of the aid is foreign military sales. And you know what that foreign military sales goes to? It goes to build our Air Force to protect us. So if anybody wants to cut the Israeli Air Force, well, please, you'll change the military balance in the Middle East. You leave Israel exposed to a regime in Tehran that calls for wiping us off the face of the earth.
I'm going to let Michael Short
Mr. Dershowitz and Mr. Gold are basically arguing that the status quo is just fine.
Did you hear me say that?
Did I say that?
Could you just allow him to say what he is going to say?
They dork around with these political questions, you know, that are obviously it's like you know, an unknowable about who's going to give up this land and that land. But the ultimate is Israel needs to be in a position to do whatever it wants militarily, and the Americans, it's incumbent on the Americans to do that. Well, that's fine if there are only Palestinian Muslims in the world. But we are under attack by the Sunnis around the world, an extraordinary threat to the United States internally and externally. And to think that our support for Israel is not a negative in terms of our ability to defend ourselves is just a fantasy. And as long as we're supporting the Israelis, they're using our planes to kill Palestinians, it's not going to be a good thing for the United States.
I must just come in with a brief quote. Al-Sharq al-Awsat is a Saudi-owned newspaper published in London, and therefore what its editor writes is of extreme significance. On December 21st, 2008, the editor-in-chief of Sharq al-Awsat wrote the following: Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons is a serious threat to our region, not Israel. Something is changing. People in the Gulf understand that at the moment Iran gets nuclear weapons, its Revolutionary Guards will be emboldened. You remember after the Islamic Revolution, they went into Qatar, they went into Bahrain, and it's going to happen again. People in the Gulf understand that. They understand that Israel is a sideshow.
Okay, I'm going to take a question from the lady in the center. Yes, you.
Hi. My question is also for Professor Dershowitz. I am an American, and I didn't really know anything about Israel or Palestine before I visited this summer. And I got to see Israel, I got to see Palestine, and I saw a lot of individual rights being violated. And I'm just wondering, it says you're the most distinguished defender of individual rights. How do you reconcile that title with this support of Israel? Don't you think that saying the U.S. shouldn't be tough on Israel is kind of contradicting your defense of individual rights?
No, I support Israel because no country in the history of the world faced with comparable threats has ever had a higher standard of human rights, a higher concern for the rights of civilians, a higher attitude, a better attitude toward gay rights, for example, toward equality for women, toward environmental rights. Every country needs improvement. I'm a member of the ACLU. I fight against discrimination in this country. I fight against the imperfections of this country. Israel's an imperfect democracy. But compared to the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, compared to any of the Arab countries around them, but Israel is a democracy, and it's an imperfect democracy, and it has more organizations and more criticism of Israel by Israelis. Leave it alone.
You don't think democracy should be held to higher standards?
I think democracy should not be forced by other democracies when they have internal mechanisms for change. That is, we should be tough with countries that have no right of dissent. We should be tough with China on Tibet. We should be tough with Russia on Chechnya. We should be tough on countries that there is no ability to have dissent. In Israel, they have mechanisms for improvement. They have the most activist Supreme Court in the world.
I'm going to take another question. Lady with the scarf there, please.
Thank you. My name is Kelsey Spitz, and I'm a Georgetown student, but I'm from Toronto, Canada. And one aspect of the debate that hasn't been brought up is the fact that the United States is currently trying to recover from 8 years of its worst international reputation. And an aspect of that reputation comes from its support of Israel. The rest of the world does see Israel as failing in providing proper human rights to the Palestinians, most importantly, the right to life. and that every single time there is a rocket attack, the response from Israel is substantially larger, and civilians are dying in amounts disproportionate to the damage to Israel. So my question is, can we talk about, for a minute, the international community, and how can the United States improve its international reputation without getting tough on Israel on the fact that the world does see the Palestinians suffering?
If you think that the reputation of the Bush administration in the last 8 years had to do with Israel, you're taking some awfully strong medicine.
My country,
that
it
has nothing to do. First of all, Israel had nothing to do with the Iraq War, notwithstanding Michael Scheuer. The Prime Minister of Israel was opposed to the United States getting involved in Iraq. AIPAC took no position on the Iraq War. Blame the last 8 years on George Bush, not on Israel, please.
As an international citizen, we see a lot of hypocrisy from the United States, and part of it's in Israel.
Well, you may be. But in fact, if you look at who got elected in most European countries in recent years, prime ministers who supported Israel in Germany, in Italy, in England. So I'm not sure that your position is accurate. Newspapers and the media, perhaps, but public opinion in Europe is not what I think you're describing it as.
Mr. Dershowitz.
And the Prime Minister of Canada is the strongest supporter of Israel in the world.
And Australia and India.
It's also a minority government.
Clearly, Mr. Dershowitz, the war in Iraq is the responsibility of the American fifth column that supports Israel.
Oh, that is ridiculous.
Mr.
I'm
Wolfowitz,
part of that full fifth column, right? I oppose the war in Iraq.
You are exactly part of it,
And
sir.
I oppose the war in Iraq.
Well, you didn't do it quite well enough, did
more
you?
Jews than any other ethnic group in America oppose the war in Iraq. What you're saying
let us
is
into war.
bigotry.
You're-
is bigotry.
Okay. Yeah.
You're accused of bigotry. Out! To blame
comes-
the Iraq war on the
Please,
Jews
I don't want
is
this
bigotry.
descending into
Out
personal
comes the
attacks,
Excalibur
please.
of American politics. Bigotry, anti-Semitism.
Excuse me. Can we just keep this in a civilized basis,
No.
please? We managed to do this in the Gulf. I would like to do this in the United States as well. I'm going to take another question. Excuse me. No. I'm going to go to the lady in the fourth row there. Yes, you in the striped top, please.
Hi, I'm a student at Georgetown University, and I have a question directed towards Mr. Scheuer. I'm a little bit confused about the side that you're taking in this debate, because you spoke extensively about how the U.S. was unsuccessful in Afghanistan, the U.S. was unsuccessful in Iraq. So I'm just wondering, as a former CIA worker, why would you want the U.S. to use their limited resources in a country that already has so many policies that defend human rights, as Mr. Dershowitz spoke about? Why do you think that the U.S. would be successful in Israel?
I don't think so. My position is we shouldn't care what happens to or in Israel.
But you're on the side that says that you should get tough on
We
Israel.
should get tough.
So
We should
I'm
make
just
them grow.
wondering what
I
you're
started to
thinking.
say is we should make them grow up.
Oh,
Both the
because
Palestinians.
the U.S. is Israel's parent.
Oh, absolutely. They know exactly how far they can go because we will always pull their coals out of the fire. But so will the Palestinians know the same thing. Ultimately,
You spoke about how the U.S. should not bolster democracies around
absolutely.
the world.
We have no business
so
building democracies.
Why are you on the side that says that the U.S. should be tough against Israel?
I'm
Well,
sorry.
I think Mr. Scheuer just answered that by saying it's time to tell Israel to grow up. I think that was his
But isn't
answer
his
to your
position
question.
that it's time to get America out of Israel's business?
I'm sorry.
I think Mr. Scheuer just answered that by saying it's time to tell Israel to grow up. I think that was his
But isn't
answer
his
to your
position
question.
that it's time to get America out of Israel's business? Aren't you really saying it's time to get America out of Israel's business? He supports our side of the resolution.
But I support the end of all military aid, the end of all diplomatic relations.
All diplomatic relations. You want the United States to cut off diplomatic relations with Israel?
Absolutely, sir.
Abraham,
You got it.
Abraham Berg.
It's a fantastic evening. I mean, there were many topics covered, but the one we came for. So, so with your permission, I'll try to come back to the issue. Yes, on various issues, we take various positions, which is natural, but it's one topic that divides us. So, says Mike, the pressure is by putting out that will put enough pressure on Israel. Says Alan, the pressure is on certain fields, but very smart one, and don't call it pressure. Fine.
Don't call it tough.
Don't call it tough, don't call it pressure, call it carrot. Fine.
That's your word.
Okay?
That was your word.
Call it stick, your word, okay? Never mind, okay? But I believe that the argument is not whether Israel is a good place to live in. It's a very good place to live in. I love it. Is it a good place? Can it be a better place? Yes, we believe it can be a better place. But it is about the well-being of the region and the well-being of the world. Israel, unfortunately, as tiny as it is a component which impacts and influences so many other systems, regional, aerial, Mediterranean, European, and maybe even wider than this. So the question is, can we let Israel just do whatever it likes, or can we call for a much more responsible policy of the state of Israel, and Israel listens very carefully to what is being said here?
Which is your definition of getting tough.
That's my definition of getting tough, which is fine.
I'll take a question from the gentleman on the end there. You, sir. Yeah.
Well, my name's Om Gore, and I'm a sophomore at Georgetown. And my question is, why is it that getting tough on Israel is mutually exclusive with getting tough on any other nation, Arab or otherwise, that may be committing human rights violations, that may have policies of discrimination or instance of discrimination?
Because that's not the resolution. If the resolution were, should the United States get tough on all the parties to the Middle East, I would have a very different view. The resolution is, should it get tough on Israel? And it will be perceived as on Israel alone, and it will weaken the chances for peace.
But Professor, the resolution says the United States should get tough on Israel. It does not say, and at the same time be soft on Iran, as Ambassador Gold has said, nor does it say the United States should ignore other countries' aggression in the policy.
Those other countries, and when we engage countries that are aggressive, and we then are tough on countries that are trying to make peace, it sends exactly the wrong message. There's no worse time to get tough than in an administration that rightfully is getting soft and engaging on Israel's enemies, including those who are the former axis of evil.
I'm going to move on to a gentleman who's got his hand up. You. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
My name is Reza. I'm a senior in the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown. I'm from Pakistan, and my question is to the proposition. We all know what a candidate has to say to get elected in the United States to positions of power. Given what they have to say, the hoops they have to jump through, and that the support that they need to receive from certain lobbies or from the public, is it correct for a government or for a politician to enact a policy or to put pressure on a country when there is no public support for it?
Michael Scheuer.
It's a good question.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Excellent question.
So, for whatever reason, whether it's because of a very strong Israel lobby or because everybody else is indifferent, there is not a lot of political support in the United States for getting tough on Israel. Given that being the case, if we assume that to be the case, is it correct for the United States government to get tough on Israel if it is a policy that is not representative of its public?
The basic question is America a democracy? Should it listen to its people?
Alan Dershowitz, please, you're a lawyer.
He didn't understand the question.
He does now.
I'm trying to explain.
He does now. Thank you very much.
Every time I open my mouth, I sound like Dershowitz. I don't...
You should be so lucky.
The United States government should do what's in the interest of the United States government.
As defined
Is that decided by the few elites who get elected, or is that decided by who votes in the politicians to the office? I think what those politicians decide is based upon what its public wants, or at least that's the idea
I think
behind
the
democracy.
American people vote mostly on unfortunately, domestic issues. If you notice, there was very little discussion of Iraq or Afghanistan, except on the very surface during the campaign. And of course, both candidates groveled to the Israeli lobby. Consistently, you know, Mr. Obama did the Tel Aviv two-step for the last 6 months of the campaign, and then appointed an IDF veteran to be his chief of staff. So, you know, I tend to think that the only thing that forms American foreign policy should be American interests. We have no interest in Palestine. We have no interest in Israel.
It's about time to rethink about the reality. We're living in a new reality, and using an old talk for a new situation is wrong. Now, I do not believe that everything is politics. I believe that sometimes there are inner truths. The United States of America is the leader of the free world. And if it wants to promote